Welcome to the Makor Podcast, where insightful conversations unfold at the intersection of teaching, learning, and parenting. Join us as we dive into the dynamic world of education and family life, exploring the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, or someone navigating both roles, this podcast is a valuable space for learning, reflection, and community. On the Makor Podcast, we will tackle the tough questions, celebrate successes, and offer guidance on the unique joys and trials of raising and educating the next generation. Welcome, everyone. We are honored and privileged to have with us today Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, the Mardi Astor, the Rav of the BRS Boca Raton Synagogue, but really, over the last few years, the inspirational leader worldwide. There are thousands of people listening to Rabbi Goldberg's shiurim, podcasts, articles. Rabbi Goldberg is responsible, and to some degree, for the migration of people coming down to Florida and joining this amazing, amazing community on a personal level. I want to thank you, Rabbi Goldberg, for being such a good friend to me in the 3 years that I've been part of Catskill Day School and with my transition to South Florida as well. So it's a true treat and privilege to have you here with us.
Thank you. The only true thing you said in that introduction is that we're good friends. The rest of it was a exaggeration nobody, including me, believes. Okay. But thank you for your kind words
anyway. We'll come back to those things. Okay.
Thank you.
Rabbi Goldberg, for a good amount of time, for a good stretch of time, if you were a child growing up in America, things were good. You know, you joined Little League. You went for ice cream on Sunday, preference of Carvel, Baskin-Robbins, Haagen-Dazs. You went to shul, you went to groups. Things were good. And then came COVID, and the world turned upside down for children, for the whole world, but in particular for children. And then came the war and all the things that these children are dealing with today. Needless to say, it's a crazy world for all of us. Would you say there might be a silver lining, perhaps, that with the difficulties that they're encountering today, we have to, is there a silver lining, and do we find that silver lining? Because on another podcast I said earlier this month that as a Jew, I think you need to have two hearts, like you have two kidneys. Everyone has two kidneys, but as a Jew, you have to have two hearts. With one heart, every limb of our body is thinking and feeling Eretz Yisrael and what's happening around all over the world. But with the other heart, we have to make weddings and go to bar mitzvahs, and we have to educate children and open up shuls and have minyanim and shiurim. You need two hearts.
Right.
So having said that, would that silver lining be for children that because they were never challenged like this, to grow up in a world like this, that there's an aspect of becoming a little bit tougher and resilient and being able to keep mitzvahs and Torah and serve Hashem in difficult times?
I think for sure. I think you really said it well. I'm concerned that we've conditioned ourselves to actually insulate our children. So whatever potential, whether you call it a silver lining or you call it every crisis as an opportunity, I hope that we're not depriving our children of that opportunity because we are so conditioned and we're so used to running interference and building insulation and protecting them from any of the opportunities that they're getting right now. It was very interesting after COVID. I wrote an article about this. After COVID, soon after COVID, when we began to emerge again, there was this enormous, I'm sure it affected here at school, and it affected the community at large. There was a huge flu, a huge RSV virus. There were all kinds of viruses that came, and they came with a vengeance. Because what happened was, when things were shut down, and here in the Free State of Florida, which was shorter than elsewhere, but when things were shut down, everybody's immune system was much lowered. They didn't have to fight off bacteria and illness and infection, so the immune system went down. And when we were exposed once again to each other, there was a much greater sensitivity. And this isn't my theory. I read about it because I was curious. All of a sudden, everybody I knew had the flu, a severe cold, RSV virus. People were hospitalized and really, really dangerous. And it was just a coincidence that after Corona, all of a sudden this came upon. And there was actually a technical medical name for it in terms of the overreaction of our collective immune system because we weren't exposed. And the article I wrote and what it made me think about was emotionally and spiritually and mentally, When we aren't exposed, when we're making such an effort to insulate and to protect, then there's our spiritual immune system, our spiritual emotional capacity is lowered as well. So the whole notion that today, and I don't mean to belittle this in the least, and it's important and we have to work on it, even the notion of the word microaggression, like you looked at me the wrong way. Right? When we were kids, you looked at someone that would like, you get off a test, or you'd stay home from school, or because someone looked at you the wrong way. Like, it wasn't nice. Someone should step in and deal with it. We should talk to you about how to absorb that, how to react, how to respond, how to feel about it. And then move on. Like grow up. That's part of growing up. That's part of life. In a world of macroaggressions, there's no awareness of microaggressions. There's microaggression when everything is so prosperous, so comfortable, so secure, so well. You could only be talking about microaggression because everything in your life is so good. Everything in your life is so good. So being the recipient, the target or subject of aggression, it's horrible. We want to stop it, but it also builds up. In that article, I found the data on in Israel. Everybody knows this, right? You fly today and they'll come on and they'll say, someone on this flight has a peanut allergy. Please, nobody take peanut M&M, put them away. I remember once I took a flight. It was one of those days. I think I paid a shiva call. I flew there in and out the same day. I wasn't near any kosher food. Like the one thing I was going to eat the whole day, I bought in the airport. I'd take out a mortgage to buy like a bag of peanut M&Ms. It's like the one thing I was going to eat the whole day. I was going to get on the plane and eat the peanut M&Ms. And they came on. There's like someone on the plane has a peanut allergy. Don't open it. You could kill them. You could kill them if you open it up, right? Where's the country in the world that has the lowest peanut allergy? It's Israel. Why? Because Bamba, the whole country is exposed to it from the youngest age. And the more you're exposed, then the less vulnerable you are. That doesn't mean there aren't exceptions. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be sensitive. I'm not suggesting we should kill people with peanut allergies. We have to be sensitive and careful. My point is that when we are hyper protective, we're not actually protecting, we're damaging and we're making it worse. So yeah, if there was any opportunity in all these crises, it's to turn to our children who are growing up relative to us and relative to any time in all of history, beyond spoiled, which is no longer a judgment or a criticism. It's a reality. The poorest people in our time, the biggest beneficiaries of our community support, from Tomchei Shabbos and scholarship and everything else, are living more luxurious, comfortable, prosperous lives than anyone 20, 30, 50 years ago, right? A person who's struggling the most still has a roof over their head, probably has a car, hasn't hit necessarily 300,000 miles, probably has a smartphone, maybe it's not the latest edition, it's not that long ago, probably has, and there's no credit, they have a washing machine and a dryer, and they have a dishwasher. It's not a criticism of anybody. That's the reality. So we're living in a prosperous time that even those who have the least have more than anyone before them ever had. And I think that these crises represent opportunities to learn perseverance, tenacity, resolve, how to lean in, how to, the blessing of the skimni. I'm sure you remember that book. So I do think there is. And the point is that the world is providing that lesson, as it always did. Life provides the greatest lessons, is the ultimate classroom. Sort of parents, get out of the way. Don't block these lessons from being learned. Let the kid fall and skim their knee. Let them figure out, it's hard. Corona was really hard, and it's hard. I had kids in school during Corona, and hard on parents, hard on kids, and Zoom. And my kids who were in pivotal years during that in school, there's no question the impact is felt there, but it'll make them stronger and have greater endurance in the long run. And now, too, we have to be careful what we let our kids see and are exposed to in terms of elements of this war, but it builds strength and tenacity. That's the only way the Jewish people are still here.
You articulated that so beautifully, and I'm going to talk about my own children first, because I have a saying I always say, I can run this school with 700 kids here, but it's the 5 at home that I can't manage. So anything I say, I'm talking about myself first. But resilience is something that's so dear to me, something that I'm so passionate about. And I talk about it all the time. People hear me talk about it all the time, and I'll continue talking about it because of the things that you said. Today we sent out an email to the parent body because this is the time where they start thinking about next year and where their children are going to be placed. And they're so nervous. My child must have this teacher. These 3 kids, not these 2 kids, has to have math first thing in the morning because that's when he's the freshest. And
this is when everyone listening is like, and that's why I did not go into Jewish education.
And we're trying to impress upon them, it's not because it's hard for us and you're bothering us, and this is going to become a lot of work in the summer, which it is. But it's because it's not good for your child, because they're going to get into the colleges, universities, yeshivas, or wherever they go, and then you can't call the deans and professors and the Rosh Hashivas
Right.
in Eretz Yisrael, even though they're trying to, from what I hear. And then your child never learned how to navigate that part of life. The other thing you mentioned about bullying, like you said, on the court or on the baseball field, if I got into something with somebody, we figured it out within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We're back playing. Now it can become emails upon emails, and I'm not downplaying bullying. Bullying is very serious. God forbid, lo aleinu, kids have committed suicide from them. They can become depressed from it. It has to be handled very seriously. I'm not talking about real bullying.
Right.
I'm referring back to what you brought up, where if somebody looks at somebody the wrong way during lunch, what's the school going to do about it? My son was bullied today. Something happened, but I don't think your son or daughter was bullied. I think we need to just figure out
Right.
how they can
We're even
apologize
talking.
to each
Was
other.
that a microaggression or a
That's what you were
macroaggression?
saying, yeah.
Right? Does it deserve this level of response, or is it the kind of thing that there's a teachable moment and process it and move on? We've lost perspective.
And there is the lesson of what they're going through today,
Yeah.
which is, as you said, we have to be very careful to what we show them and what we not show them. But everyone knows my story. This is how I grew up. I grew up with a war taking place in Iran, civil war, and missing an entire year, running away, not being in school. I missed all of third grade.
Right.
So, we have parents, and again, I'm talking about myself. If my son misses 2 days of school, I think he's gonna fail math.
Yeah.
He missed 2 days of math. He can't pass.
Right.
But I missed 1 full year of school, and I think I did okay. You compensate.
For sure.
So with all that they're going through, again, we support them, and it's difficult. We have to be careful with what they do see, do not see, and comfort them that they're safe.
It's an amazing inclination of the Jewish people and of parents, Jew or non-Jew, that the impulse is to run in and to help and to. But if a person stops and pauses and thinks, "Am I helping in the long run? Am I hurting?" I'm sometimes my family thinks I'm too autobiographical, but I'm happy to share. I don't mind sharing. When I look back at my life, it was the experiences of the no or the failures that I learned the most. And I'm very blessed when I look back at my life in 1,000,001 different ways. But there was one experience where I didn't get into something. And I was not a good student at all. I was in the middle classes, I didn't get good grades. When I say I didn't get in, I'm not going to now tell you my list of, once upon a time you'd say Ivy League schools, you won't say that now. But there was one in camp in the follow-up year, and I was on the wait list. Happened to have been the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because that was the summer that instead, I went to Morosh HaKol that summer. It changed the trajectory of my life, and it was fantastic. But in the moment, it was devastating. And there were other moments like that were devastating, and they stand out. I vividly remember, as a child, I don't remember the exact age. It was a Shabbos, I had done something. My father said, "You're not leaving the house today. You're not leaving the house." He had through work, and we never had this. It was exceptional. It wasn't once a year. It was less frequent than that. He got for our family a box at the Ranger game that night, Motzei Shabbos. We weren't hockey fans. We weren't sports fans. We didn't get a box. It wasn't like our life. I don't know how it happened, but it was a lot of excitement, a lot of build-up. And my father made it very clear. If you leave the house today, you're not coming tonight. Whatever I had done, you're not leaving today, which wasn't, okay. But I left the house. I didn't care. I was like, I'm out of here. I want to go hang out with my friend. I'm leaving.
Wow.
Came back. Shabbos, Havdalah. My father said, "Okay, everybody, we're heading out. Efrem, you're staying home." I was like, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. I stayed home. He meant business. I didn't go. I was miserable the whole night. I said things I won't ever admit I said, and feelings and expressions and probably even language. It was great for me. It taught me a lesson of consequence, of accountability, a lesson that life will teach you if your parents don't. The world will teach you in your job, in your marriage, in your health and wellness. It taught me a lesson. I'll tell you one other story. I was ready to start. I thought I was ready to start dating. I wanted to start dating. But I was relatively young. I was 21 years old. Makubal told me, ach tov v'chesed, matzah isha matzah tov, ach is 21, you should start. That was good enough for me. That was the confirmation I needed. I was ready. Spoke to my parents. My father said, I grew up, wonderful. I wasn't lacking anything, but sort of upper middle class and not spoiled in any which way. And my father said, okay, you're ready to support yourself. Take it. You have a plan. Like, you can't get married and not have a plan. So, okay, I got a plan. I'm going to get married. We'll go to Grus. Kollel NYU is incredible. Kollel in Israel, great years of my life, and from there I'll be in a position to earn a living, and I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out from there. I said, great, then go for it. And helpful in every which way you could. But that was, I met Yocheved. I went out with a date. It was fantastic. It might have been our third or fourth date. I don't remember what it was. It's in YU. I had my grandfather's old car. It was an embarrassing car, but it was his old car. That's what I had. That was my car. Parked at YU, Washington Heights. I go to the car to get ready to drive all the way out to Lawrence to pick her up to go on a date. I get in the car won't start. Try again, the car won't start. I run back because there were no cell phones. I call home. I need you to come over the bridge, man. I grew up in Teaneck. You gotta give me the car. I gotta go. My father says, "You old enough to get married? You old enough to figure this out?" And he hangs up the phone.
Unbelievable.
Well, my father loves me more than anything in the world. I love him. I love him because he taught. My father's not like if anyone who knows my father now, they know the retired version, the hanging out in Boca, the soft, lovable. They don't believe these stories that I tell. He taught me a lesson. The car started. I was able to get there. Everything was good. But it taught me a lesson. When I went to my 2 years in Israel, my gap year in Karen B'Yavna, my parents said, "We can get you to Israel and back, and we can pay your tuition. Any spending money's on you." So I bought a haircut kit. And I learned how to give haircuts. And in the dorm, I gave haircuts. And my second year, I bought a little fryer. I made French fries that night. Forgot. Those taught me lessons. That made me who I am. Consequences, accountability, responsibility, empowerment, failure. There's no such thing as win, lose, win, learn. All those, they're not just cliches. They're things, kids read that in a book today or listen on a podcast. If we don't provide that for our children, then someone else will in a much, much harsher version. And the earlier and sooner and softer that we can do it, the better position they'll be for when life, in whatever which way, is going to have a disappointment for them because they think that parents, no matter how badly. If a child's struggling with infertility or secondary infertility, nobody told children when they're running to get married, shadchanim and dating coaches and supporting them for years and getting them started and wedding singers and choirs and kid choirs and florists and all the beautiful things to do. And does anyone prepare them? Is anyone telling you in your senior year or your gap year in Israel or in the chassan or kala class, do you know that a third of pregnancies end in miscarriage? Do you know what percentage of people struggle with fertility? I don't want to scare you or create anxiety for you, but let's manage this because mom and dad can't, even if they could write the big check, which is necessary in these situations, nobody can. So will life prepare people for when things don't go our way? And give us what it will take to get through it, because either we'll get through it and be stronger, or it'll knock us down and we may never get up.
You mentioned the story with the car. Recently, I got a ride with someone, and one of their children in the back spilled something, and the father said, "Don't worry about it. I'm giving the car back next month." My father bought an 81 blue Buick Skylark. He ran it into the ground where he buried it on the last day. He changed the carburetor. He changed the drums. I don't even know what this stuff means.
Right.
I open up the hood and I call Geico to come, But that was his car.
Sure.
His car was his car. He took care of it. If there was a spill, he would clean it. If there was a repair to be done. But in this age of chat pami, and every 3 years we give our car back, it's
when my father's car, I don't remember whether it was 100,000 or 200,000, but I remember the family packed into the car. He was at right before the odometer was going to turn. Kids don't know what an odometer is. We got into the car. It was like an event. We're going to all be in the car. We're going to watch the odometer. It's going to hit whatever, 100, 200. I don't remember what the number was. But I remember that, right? Like you're saying, like you're describing. It's just not that world today.
That was his car. Would you say that the Rabbanim can play a role in teaching resilience to the parents to give over to their children also? Because at the end of the day, it's very difficult. We're wired innately to jump in front of our kids. As many times as we regret it and say, why did I call the school so quickly? Why did I scream at that teacher? Why did I? And then 2 weeks later, their child is complaining and they feel that he is hurt or suffering, and they can't help it. That's how Hashem created us. That's how we're wired. So we're trying to tackle that on the school front. Are we doing a great job? We're trying. It's hard.
Right.
Is there a role in shuls and in the Rabbanim to talk about? Do you talk about it in your drushes? You mentioned.
Rabbis have a captive audience on Shabbos morning, or we used to actually, not necessarily anymore, but we have a relatively captive audience, and I guess to a certain degree, we can try to inspire some conversations around Shabbos tables by being provocative, not in a negative way, but trying to get people to talk about it. And it's an interesting thing. It never occurred to me. I wonder if schools and shuls can coordinate drasha topics. So let's say, right before school lists are released, say, hey, Rabbi, this Shabbos, maybe build into the drasha the value of not running interference to try to switch where your kid is. And even though many of the listeners will be like, yeah, that was for my neighbor, but my kid needs to be switched. But in all seriousness, maybe there could be a much better coordination on themes, on topics, and in the other direction too. Hey, could school we're working on this effort. Could you communicate through the kids or reward the parents if we collaborate and do it together? I think there's definitely a lot of room to do that.
Love the idea. And the next time we're at the VAD meeting, maybe
For
we
sure.
can bring this up. Now, interestingly, my first Shabbos here, before school started, Rabbi Blumenthal, who is the Rav of BRS West, where I daven, got up, and in his drasha, I was mortified. He said, school is beginning this week. Do not call Rabbi Sadigh about switches, about things that he has a lot to do. He just got here, and he has to get this school up and running. I was in the back crawling under that.
Right.
He said it. He said, do not call the school. They've placed the kids. The school's ready to go. Just give your kids a feeling that it's going to be great at the kitchen table, at breakfast, at the Shabbos table. They hear you. Talk positively that they're going to have a great year. So
but I think one of the things that's missing for too many people, I know you appreciate this, and I try to do this, is nuance and subtlety. So even if a rabbi heard this or were inspired and said, I'm going to give that drush, they'd get up and they'd be like, nobody called it. I think there needs to be subtlety that says, I'm not telling you what to do, and everybody's child or circumstance is different, and maybe the right thing for your child is for you to make that call. But I want to challenge you to think about this before you do. And I think that subtlety makes it, people are much more
100%.
Open to hearing it. And that's with all these things. And that's our job in general, right? Is I just want to challenge us to think about this before we do that. Like take a deep breath, take a pause, and if at the end of challenging ourselves, say, yeah, this meets the criteria that I think this gets a call. And you know what? As much as I'm desperate to, I'm not going to. Yeah.
It's amazing. I'd love to work on that partnership.
Right.
I posted this week a clip from when I was on Meaningful People where I said that all the studies in the world show that it takes one teacher to change a child's life. It's a known thing. And it's Teacher Appreciation Week this week. So I dug up that clip and I posted it. Is there a person that you can point to and say, I'm sure there's many, but is there one person in your life where you could say, it was her, it was him, this is the person that picked me up and said, I can do anything and I can accomplish great things?
That's a good question. I'll tell you before I answer, just the teacher appreciation. I rarely, barely, and I'm embarrassed and ashamed to say, ever go to teacher-parent conferences. It's complicated even for me. Just as it could sometimes be awkward, but I don't want to go. I'll be honest, I don't want to go. But my friend Brian Galbert, Alav Shalom, when he didn't see me at a parent-teacher conference, you don't go to parent-teacher conferences? I said, no, Yechevet goes, and I don't have time, and I don't enjoy it. He said, you don't take the opportunity to go thank the teacher who are devoting their life and grossly underpaid and selfless and it changed the whole thing. So the next parent-teacher conference I went to, and then I went back to my minhag of not going. But he really opened my eyes to that, because his whole perspective was, it's a miserable end, and maybe you want to hear, or you think they're doing great, I don't need to go. They're terrible, I know, I don't need to. Go for the other reason. Go to just say thank you for everything that you do. So I think that's really important, and I'm glad you remind. And that's also, by the way, it wasn't on my radar. It should have been, but maybe rabbis should also be giving that drasha or writing that article or suggesting to everybody that it's the other 51 weeks are teacher beating up week, and so 1 week there's teacher appreciation week. So they never miss the other 51 weeks. They should make sure to make that 1 week. I had great teachers and educators growing up, and I'm deeply appreciative to all of them. I don't know that anyone specific in my elementary school or even in my high school. In my high school, actually, there was a teacher who, when I was in a formidable moment and pivotal decision, that I didn't get into that summer program I wanted to go to, which was a great gift to me. Didn't feel like it in the moment, but it was a failure that launched me, and I pivoted, and instead I went to Marsha Kollel that summer. And like I said, my core friend group, where I went in my year in yeshiva, the trajectory of my life, my marriage, my children, I could point to changed because of that. But before that, the year before that was 11th grade. I went to Frisch, and my teacher was Rabbi Tully Harkstark. Wow. And he was the 11th grade Rebbe. Wow. He's now SAR. Yeah. And I just saw him recently at a conference. And I hugged him, and I said, I want to thank you. Wow. I want to thank you. I look back, and I was challenging. I was going through this growth phase, and it could have gone either direction, right? I was never the bad kid. I wasn't mixed up in huge trouble. I wasn't abandoning Yiddishkeit altogether or much at all. But I was, what then was a typical kid trying to figure out, like, Nagia, this, that, like, is it really the important? What was it all about? And he had patience, and he did extra learning. I told him, he didn't remember this. It was a pretty ambitious sefer give me at that age and stage. I have a copy of Shiurim Lezecha Abba Mari, the Rav's Yortzeit Shiurim, that he gave me as a gift, and he inscribed it. I still have it at home. So I look back, and he had a lot of patience, and he tolerated probably a fair amount of chutzpah from me in class and out of it. And he saw that I was going through this, figuring things out. It was all based on I've spoken about this too many times, other times, but it was based on a class trip to Boston, and a pivotal moment that I had to decide like who I am. When my classmates, I challenged them, and they challenged me back, and I came back and sort of directed it all on him, and he was there for me, and I'm deeply appreciative to this day.
Isn't that amazing? When I see him, I'm going to ask him more details.
He won't remember. I wonder.
But see, you
for all the children who remember that teachers, right. I wonder how many of the teachers will say they're kind. Hey, he remembers who I am, but I don't know if he remembers the details
that's
of the
another
impact.
Study. It says that the child will remember, the teacher won't remember. Right. Would you say that in the teacher shortage crisis that's national news, it's been brewing over the last few years, do you see that in Rabbanos as well, that there are less and less people going into the rabbinate role?
There's no question about it.
What do you attribute?
There's no question about it. I think there's a few factors. I'm the farthest thing from an expert. I know you've been a huge advocate in studying the issue, and we're all appreciative of that. I want to make clear I'm not an expert at all. Obviously, the financial component of it is a component of it, but it's not all of it, because we know that at the administrative level, and heads of school in particular, and rabbis in larger communities aren't getting mega wealthy or rich, but they're certainly making a living more than the average teacher. So I don't think you can point to all towards, because at that level of head of school, where I think, I'm not speaking of you, others, I think salaries are probably close to an all-time high of that level, and yet there's also an all-time low of candidates. So it can't be a correlation that's that simple. I think that some of what we were talking about before, right? When the parent bodies seem to be, instead of being on the same team, now they're the opposing team. It's exhausting. It's exhausting. You want to play with a winning team. You don't want to be one man against an opposing team. Right. That's exhausting. It's exhausting. And so that, I think, can wear people down and wear people out. Expectations, how jobs have expanded and what people are assuming, hours, and who's on your side and who's your adversary. Is I think something which is challenging for people, and they think, you know what, I can make a big contribution and do a lot. It's not so simple. Well, I can make a lot more money doing something else. I'm going to go do that instead of this. I think there are people who very sort of reasonably, some of them, young people have conversations with me, say, I could go into Avodas HaKodesh and I'll make X contribution. But the truth is, if I go into this and I make that, and then I found an organization, I become the chairperson or president, I can spend my time solving problems, being an askan, a word I think we should learn and adopt more, that I don't know our community is as familiar with, but really, because to me what an askan is, askanis is people who see problems and then are volunteering and working to solve them. Right. Whether we agree with all askanim or all the solutions to the problems, but that notion that just says that how I make a living is making a living, it's not living. I make a living this way, and then my living is solving is starting this thing as well. There's a pretty legitimate argument to that.
I've always said, I mean, again, you alluded to it, that it's something that I'm passionate about and I research. When they talk to these prospective teachers and they ask them, why aren't you going to teaching? It's not always that go-to answer about the pay and compensation and benefits. That's still an issue, right, as you mentioned. It's all the other stuff, all the other complications of managing the students and managing parents and managing a difficult day of all those hours of teaching and then coming home and doing more preparations and right, more work. But we know we don't have a choice, because the continuity of Judaism is great schools. So you're 100%. At it on that level with the community, and we have to be at it as a team to make sure that we have future leaders. And we have good...
And retention, and that's where the teacher appreciation comes in, right? Because it's not only about recruiting new, it's about retaining the good ones and those who are there, and that's where showing the appreciation, because that's also, I'm sure you can quote those studies too, are, people have different reward languages and love languages, and for some people, and teachers, rabbis, others, it's not about raising the salary, it's about the positive experience, the positive feedback, the thank you. That goes an enormous way. When I do a funeral or a wedding, or I've extended myself for someone or other people, I don't need some material gift, because thank God I'm paid a salary, and I don't expect that. And it's nice when people do and they make gestures, and it's really sweet and it's really nice. I appreciate it greatly. But the most meaningful is a heartfelt thank you. The person who wrote the card or sent that text or followed up and says, just reflecting, and you were there with that, or you made this easy, or that really made it. You're like, wow, and we all know that. That's classic research. So and that's free. So everybody runs, or they're supposed to, or they put together the Hanukkah gift and the end of the year gift and a little bit amount here and a little bit amount there. But I'm sure catching teachers doing great things and writing that thank you note for no reason and expressing that appreciation, we could all do much better. We would retain and we'd recruit if we did that.
100%. There was a commercial that I used to see from the United States Army. It says, we do more before 9 a.m. than people do all day. I think of BRS. I think BRS does more in 1 week than some Kehillas do all year. You just look at your circular, your magazine, and there's 50 shurim going on and guest speakers, and just your shurim alone and the other rabbanim that are part of the Kehillah there. How do you manage the self-care? How do you manage where, you might, God forbid, get to a place to say, I just can't do this anymore, and God forbid, I say, because we need you to do it. Do you have anything particular that you do for yourself that keeps you going and able to do, again, the operation at BRS and what you do worldwide is just...
It's not me. We have an amazing team. We're very, very blessed. You know them. They're your dear friends, our dear friends. We have an incredible staff of rabbis. We have a great team. We have great lay leaders. It's a whole group. No one person deserves the credit. And it couldn't happen if any of them were missing. Nobody's indispensable, but everybody makes enormous contributions, and that's in combination what we have as a community, both the professionals and the volunteers. It is amazing, and it's a blessing, and I'm grateful every single day. I have the greatest job and the greatest place. I wish I were in Israel until then, and it's absolutely incredible.
Do you take walks? Do you meditate? Do you play tennis?
So you want to know what I aspirationally do, what I want to do, or what I really do?
Let's start with what you do.
No, there are a few, there are a few things that I do, I should be doing. One thing that I try to do is learning for myself. I'm not a big masmid. I give a lot of shiurim and I prepare for them. That's part of my growth and also my professional responsibility. But many years ago, Rabbi Frand was visiting our community and he met with the Klei Kodesh, and I still remember it was Rabbi Chaim Lanner who asked him, how can we continue to grow while we're teaching? What can we do for ourselves? And his answer changed my life. He said, you have to learn something that you're not teaching. You're only nourishing yourself if you're learning something because everything that you teach, yes, you grow from it, but it's hard to separate. Are you doing that as a professional Jew, or are you doing that as a private Jew? So the next day I started a chavrusa, and I've kept it going ever since. And now I've been learning with Avram Belazan. We're going through our second cycle of Daf Yomi, and we have a Kol HaBoker at BRS. We started 6:15 every morning, and it is exhausting, and it is a killer. And it is a battle every day. Every day, I won't tell you what time that alarm goes off. And every day I promise myself, well, we started this and we can do this because we're going to go to sleep earlier at night, and then you're burning it on both ends. But I never regret it. It is amazing to know that before your day even started, you did the daf, you learned, you were on time to shul because you were already there. You had your cup of coffee before the davening, so your davening is a different davening. And that's like a self-care. I'm not going to pretend everywhere I go there's a sefer. I'm a masmid. I have to be learning every. Halavai. I'm growing. I want to become that person. But that knowing that learning beginning of the day and learning something that I don't give over the daf. I don't say the daf. Some things in the daf excite me. I may use somewhere, but there's not. That's a limud lishma. That's for me. It's mine, and that's a huge self-care. I enjoy comedy. I don't drive. I don't have a big commute, but I have to go elsewhere for meetings and events and things. And in the car, I'll put on comedy.
Look at that.
I love comedy. There are clean comedians, and I find comedy is a great medicine. Laughter is a great medicine. Some of the comedians? Yeah, sure. I'll give you the list. I'll give you the playlist. But they're to the point even in Sphira that you can't listen to music. I feel guilty. Should I listen to comedians? Like that's not listening to music because it's Sphira. But laughter is a great medicine. There's studies about the laughter. It's important to laugh, to let go, to be distracted, to be entertained. That's a self-care. I do love sports. I go in spurts of having time for it. Both Yankee fans. Baruch Hashem, B'li Ayin Hara so far, but they're just toying with us right now. Mm-hmm. But I've taken up tennis. I tore my Achilles playing ball a few years ago, so I'm retired from basketball. But tennis, trying to get out for tennis is a huge self-care for me. Our shul is right near a lake, and I go through spurts. I've been doing fairly decently well, where I try to make a commitment during the day to, without the phone, go for a walk around the lake and come back. It's just breathe, sunlight, clearing a head. And even though it's a short, it could take 7 minutes, 8 minutes, but it can change. It can change a day. So that's something that's really important. Obviously, family is.
Of course. Your schedule and routines remind me of a story that my Rabbi Moshe Weinberger told me. He was once in Eretz Yisrael and he wanted to see the great Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter, the Mashpia. So it was the day that he was flying and he didn't get to it. I don't know if he ever told you the story. He calls up and his wife picks up. He says, "My name is Moshe Weinberger. I'm here from America. I really need to see the Rav." And she said that the Rav has said no appointments today. He really has to do his own things. He says, "Please, I'm not from here. I'm going back to America." She said, "Let me ask my husband." Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter said, "Get into a monit right now and come right now. Get into a cab right now." So Rabbi said, I sat next to him and I said, I have no yeshiva das. Every time I think I have a half hour to myself, a call, a knock on the door, an emergency, something comes up, I can't do this. So he said, Rav Yaakov Meir Shechter said, I woke up this morning and I told my wife, Baruch Hashem, I have today all to myself. This guy Moshe Weinberger calls, he has to get back to America and he has to see me. So Rav Weinberger said, I was crawling under the table.
It's great.
He said, Rav Moshe, I also thought I had today free, but now I'm talking to you.
Right.
I want to wrap it up with something that you said when you came to speak to our children during the month of Elul. We have guest speakers, of course. It's one of our highlights when you come and speak to our children. You said that, I've been thinking about it ever since, hence how I remember it now. You were at an event and you saw some of your classmates from way back that at that time, you looked at them and said, they're the cool kids and they're successful, and you were, not sure of yourself. You were feeling, maybe inferior in some ways. And now when you were there, they were so happy to see you and all that you've accomplished and the things that you're doing. And you said the quote, what I would tell my 7th grade self if I could talk to that kid.
Yep.
So
thank you for reminding me. I haven't thought about that.
Tell me a little bit more about that, because I've been thinking about that statement ever since you said it.
I'm glad you reminded me.
And I want
it.
people to be able to take moments to do that, to go back to their 5th grade self. Because I think of the things that I used to worry about, and the way I thought that I can't do this and I can't do that, and I'll never accomplish that.
Right.
I wish I can go back and save myself all that agmas nefesh of, no, just be humble and do it the right way. But those voices, I wish I could talk back to them.
No, I appreciate you reminding me, because I forgot about that. And it was so on my mind that when I came here, it was like a bizarre thing that a rabbi, adult, and I told a group of kids, it was like, it was public group therapy for me. It was excellent. And it was free, so thank you. I appreciate it.
They were talking to me about it afterwards.
I had it, when I was in middle school, I wanted to be a cool kid. And I was sort of on the border, maybe on the boundary of it. I don't know that I broke in. I wanted to be. And I don't know if I was comfortable with my own skin. I wanted to be. I wanted to be with that crowd. I wanted to be with those kids. I wanted to be that athlete. I wanted to be, and I was always trying to break in. So this is, here we are years later, and one of the kids who was, one of the top athletic, cool kids, looked up to, want to be picked on his team, want to hang out, want to be invited for a shot, and I'm at a wedding, and he's talking to me, and he says to me, "Can I take a picture with you for my kid? He won't believe I'm with you. He listens to your shiur." I almost passed out. I'm like, this guy in 7th grade, I was desperate to be on his basket, to be with, and he wants to take a picture with me, not from an ego standpoint, he wants to take a picture with me, but like I couldn't believe it. And in that, all I thought in that moment was not a guy who wants a picture with me, I didn't care. All I thought about in that moment was, if I could talk to my 7th grade self, say, right now, this feels like this is everything. There's life, there's tomorrow. And just to end with this, I would say that to everybody today. And as a rabbi, I deal with that all the time. I was just dealing with a couple going through a very hard time who got news about a certain thing, and they're going to go through a hard period. And it's not a health issue, it's not a medical issue. And I just said, I want you to know that it feels like right now the sky is falling, this is the end, and it's over, and the walls are caving in. Take a deep breath. There is a day after. There is a tomorrow. There is a tomorrow where you're about to go through. I've been through with others, and I want you to know that. And I think that's true in 7th grade, and you didn't get invited to the party or picked for the team. I think it's true when you didn't get into that school. I think it's true if that shidduch didn't say yes. There's so many points in our life where it feels like the sky is falling. And if you could later talk back to yourself, you would have been saying, what were you panicked about? What were you overreacting about? Take a deep breath, let go and let God. Go for the ride with him. He's got a plan. Mark Twain famously said, In my life, there were so many terrible things, most of which that I worried about, most of which never happened. Some quote like that. So how much energy we'd spend worrying on the things that never ended up happening. So that was a big moment for me. That was a big.
I wrote it down and I keep it on my desk.
Wow.
And this is exactly how I wanted to end it, because I was going to ask you, with all that's going on in the world, you're the one giving chizik to everyone, but are you that crying clown that when you come home, you yourself, need the chizik yourself? And I think you answered it. You take it day by day. We're going to mincha, I'm going to marav, I'm getting up tomorrow,
Yeah.
I'm putting on tefillin, I'm making brachas, I'm trying to do good into the world. Hashem has a plan. Of course we want Mashiach. Of course we're going to be gathered very soon and taken to Eretz Yisrael. But there has to be some temporary redemptions until the final redemptions.
Exactly.
Rabbi Goldberg, thank you so much for honoring us.
Thank you for this opportunity, for your friendship.
And thank you so much
for your contribution to our community.
It's a zechut for me. That's all I have to say. And I hope that we're going to stay friends for a long time.
I know we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.